Arthur Brennan had always been a visionary. At the age of 38, he was the picture of success, CEO of one of the largest sustainable construction companies in the country, a sought-after speaker, and a role model for young aspiring engineers. His face graced the covers of business magazines, and his story of overcoming adversity was frequently cited as an inspiration. However, behind that facade of confidence and achievements was a man who carried a deep-seated resentment, rooted in his teenage years. Born in a small town, Arthur was the eldest of 6 siblings. His parents, although loving, could barely keep up with the bills, let alone give individualized attention to each child. The Brennan household was a constant chaos, with children running around, accumulated household chores, and a permanent sense that something important was always left behind. In this environment, Arthur learned early on to fend for himself, developing an independence that would later be crucial to his success. School was his refuge. There, away from the household chaos, Arthur could focus, learn, and dream of a different future. It was in this setting that Mr. Fletcher entered his life as an unyielding presence. Tall, thin, and always dressed in a worn blazer, the math teacher was more feared than admired by the students. His reputation for extreme rigor preceded every class, and his piercing gaze seemed to scrutinize not only the students' answers, but also their deepest intentions. From the very first day, Mr. Fletcher seemed to have chosen Arthur as a special case of challenge. While other students received words of encouragement for correct answers, Arthur was met with a critical look, followed by an even more complex problem, almost impossible to solve. Mistakes were not merely corrected, they were dissected with harsh comments that left no room for justification or hesitation. Any attempt at explanation was cut off with short, incisive phrases, as if admitting an error was the first step to overcoming it. As time went by, Arthur began to view each lesson as a personal battle. He spent hours studying, determined to deliver perfect answers. But even when he did, he rarely received more than an almost imperceptible nod of approval. This created in him a mixture of respect and frustration, as if Mr. Fletcher was constantly raising the bar of his expectations just so he could never reach it. Yet there was something in his relentless approach that ignited in Arthur the will to go beyond, even when it seemed like nothing was ever enough. Years passed and Arthur left his hometown behind, carrying with him the determination to prove his worth. Every achievement in his career was, in a way, a silent response to that stern look of Mr. Fletcher. But now, returning to his city for the first time in 2 decades to oversee a major urban revitalization project, all those long-suppressed emotions surfaced. The city hadn't changed much. The same tree-lined streets, the central square with its white-painted bandstand, the aroma of fresh bread wafting from the bakery on the corner. Everything seemed smaller than in his memories, as if the world he now knew was too big to fit in that place. Staying at the town's only hotel, Arthur found himself gazing out the window, recognizing faces and places that were part of a past he thought he had left behind. It was during one of those moments of contemplation that he spotted a familiar figure walking slowly along the sidewalk, supported by a cane. Even from a distance, and with the years weighing on his shoulders, it was unmistakable. Mr. Fletcher. Arthur's heart raced, a mixture of emotions washing over him. Before he could think twice, he was already in the street, following the teacher from a distance. He watched as the elderly man entered a small corner house, painted light blue, with a well-tended garden in front. Arthur stood there for a few minutes undecided. Part of him wanted to knock on the door, confront the man who had tormented him so much in his youth. Another part, however, hesitated, fearful of reopening old wounds. In the days that followed, Arthur found himself torn between his professional responsibilities and his growing obsession with his former teacher. He conducted meetings, inspected construction sites, and negotiated with suppliers, but his mind always returned to that blue house. Finally, one Friday afternoon, he decided it was time to face his past. With his heart pounding, Arthur knocked on Mr. Fletcher's door. Seconds that felt like an eternity passed until the door opened, revealing a middle-aged lady with a gentle smile. "Can I help you?" she asked. Arthur hesitated for a moment before responding. I am a former student of Mr. Fletcher. I would like to speak with him if possible." The woman's smile wavered slightly. "Oh, I see. Please come in. I am Sarah, his daughter. He is in the living room." As he followed Sarah through the house, Arthur noticed the walls covered with photographs. Many were of school classes over the years, others showed Mr. Fletcher in family moments. It was strange to see that stern man smiling in some of them, holding children who were probably his grandchildren. Upon entering the room, Arthur saw his former teacher sitting in an armchair, looking out the window. Time had been relentless. The hair, once grey, was now completely white, the face marked by deep wrinkles. But the eyes, those piercing blue eyes, remained the same. "Father," Sarah called softly, "you have a visitor. It's one of your former students." Mr. Fletcher turned slowly, his eyes focusing on Arthur with a vague expression. "Student. Ah, yes, of course. Welcome, young man. Please have a seat." Arthur sat down, feeling suddenly disarmed. He had imagined this meeting 1,000 times, but none of his scenarios had prepared him for this. The man in front of him seemed like a shadow of that intimidating teacher who populated his memories. "Mr. Fletcher," Arthur began, his voice trembling slightly. "I don't know if you remember me. I'm Arthur Brennan. I was your student." "Arthur?" the elderly man interrupted, his eyes momentarily lighting up with recognition. "Arthur, the boy with the impossible equations?" For a moment, Arthur felt a wave of irritation. Was that still how the teacher saw him, even now, after all this time? As the student to whom he gave the most difficult problems? Sarah, noticing the tension, gently intervened. "Father has good days and bad days. The dementia has progressed in recent years, but sometimes he has moments of surprising clarity." Arthur nodded, feeling his anger dissipate, replaced by an unexpected sadness. "I understand. Mr. Fletcher, I came because, well, I wanted you to know that I've become an engineer. I have a sustainable construction company and—" But Mr. Fletcher no longer seemed to be paying attention. His eyes had returned to the window, lost in some distant point. Arthur looked at Sarah, unsure of what to do. "Why don't you come back tomorrow?" she suggested. "Sometimes he's more lucid in the morning." On one of these visits, while flipping through an old photo album with Sarah, Arthur made a surprising discovery. "This one," Sarah pointed to a faded photo, "is the day Dad received the Educator of the Year award. He always said it was because of a special student who inspired him to be a better teacher." Arthur looked closer and felt a lump in his throat. In the photo, Mr. Fletcher was holding a trophy, and beside him stood a young Arthur, smiling shyly. I don't remember this," Arthur murmured, confused. Sarah smiled. "Dad talked a lot about you, you know. He said you were the brightest student he ever had, but that you needed to be constantly challenged to reach your true potential." Sarah's words struck Arthur like lightning. Suddenly, all the memories of his adolescence gained a new perspective. The difficult problems, the harsh criticisms, the apparent disdain, all of it had actually been Mr. Fletcher's way of pushing him forward, of making him go beyond what he himself believed he was capable of. That night, lying in his hotel bed, Arthur couldn't sleep. His mind was filled with reinterpreted memories. He remembered how, at home, his parents barely had time to check if he had done his homework, how his younger siblings always needed more attention, often leaving him to fend for himself, and how, at school, Mr. Fletcher was the only one who really seemed to care about his progress, even if in an unconventional way. In the days that followed, Arthur began to reach out to other former classmates. Each conversation brought new revelations. Maria, now a respected doctor, shared how Mr. Fletcher encouraged her to pursue her dreams when everyone said that medicine was a man's field. John, who struggled with dyscalculia, recalled how the teacher spent extra hours helping him after class. One afternoon, while walking through the city park with Lisa, his former classmate and current principal of the local school, Arthur finally understood the magnitude of Mr. Fletcher's impact on their lives. "You know, Arthur," Lisa said, watching the children playing on the playground, "Mr. Fletcher changed the lives of many of us. He saw potential where others only saw problems. To me, he was more than a teacher. He was a mentor, a guide." Arthur nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I spent so much time feeling resentful, thinking he hated me or that he had something against me. But now you see what he was really doing," Lisa completed with an understanding smile. "He believed in you, Arthur, maybe more than in any other student." That night, in his hotel room, Arthur picked up a paper and a pen. He began to write a letter to Mr. Fletcher, knowing that the teacher would probably never be able to read it or fully understand it. But he needed to put his feelings into words. "Dear Mr. Fletcher," he began, "it took me decades to understand what you did for me. Every challenge, every criticism, every impossible problem you gave me was an act of faith. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." The words flowed, and with them years of resentment dissolved. Arthur wrote about his achievements, about how Mr. Fletcher's teachings had guided him throughout his career, about how the persistence he learned in those math classes helped him overcome obstacles in the business world. The following morning, Arthur made his last visit to the Blue House on the corner. Mr. Fletcher was having one of his good days, sitting in his favourite chair with an advanced mathematics book on his lap. "Arthur," he said with a weak but genuine smile, "did you solve that equation I gave you?" For a moment Arthur was confused, but then he realised that, in the professor's mind, he was still that young student. With a smile he replied, "Yes, Mr. Fletcher, I solved it, and I have a few more for you to check if you don't mind." The elderly man's eyes sparkled with interest. "Excellent! I always knew you could do it. Show me." Arthur spent the morning with his old teacher, sharing not mathematical equations but stories of his life and career. Even if Mr. Fletcher did not completely comprehend, there were moments when a glimmer of recognition passed through his eyes, as if, for an instant, he saw the man Arthur had become. Upon saying goodbye, Arthur handed Sarah the letter he had written. "Please," he asked, "read it to him on the days when he's most lucid. And thank you for everything." Sarah, with tears in her eyes, nodded. "He would be so proud of you, Arthur. In fact, he always was." As he walked back to the hotel to pack and return to his life in the big city, Arthur knew he was carrying with him much more than he had brought. He had regained not only memories, but a new appreciation for those who challenged him to be better. And so the lesson that Mr. Fletcher had planted decades ago finally blossomed, not only in Arthur's life, but in the lives of all those he now inspired and guided. The cycle of learning, growth, and gratitude continued, proving that sometimes the people we most fear facing are exactly the ones we most need in our lives. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.